Well, hello. I was up until very early this morning. I didn't go to bed till 4 o'clock.
The year was 2021. A seismic event shook the very foundations of the British monarchy. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, sat down for a tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey. This was no ordinary conversation. It was a public airing of grievances, a raw and emotional exposé that sent shockwaves around the world. Millions tuned in, eager to hear the couple's side of the story. What followed was a media frenzy, with every word and gesture dissected and debated ad nauseum. The interview was a defining moment in the relationship between the Sussexes and the royal family. It marked a clear before and after, a point of no return. The carefully constructed wall between the monarchy and the public had been breached. The world had been given a glimpse behind the curtain, and what they saw was both shocking and deeply unsettling. One of the most explosive revelations from the Oprah interview was the allegation of racism within the royal family. Meghan, a biracial woman, claimed that there had been concerns and conversations about the skin colour of her unborn child, Archie. This bombshell sent shockwaves through the monarchy and ignited a firestorm of controversy. The identity of the individual who allegedly made these comments remains a closely guarded secret.
Because I had to tune in to the show, because it was a show, and a very well produced and directed show, that Meghan, Harry and Oprah treated the world to. But before I give any of my personal thoughts on the matter, I will say I've been receiving many questions from many people asking me if I would comment. And not only am I commenting, I'm going to comment a day early. So, shall we plunge right in? You know, if you can see. I don't know if you can see Mickey, but Mickey is right here with me. Mickey, come on, say hello to everybody. Say hello to everybody. Say yes. And Mickey was up all night with her Motty Boo, weren't you, honey? So shall we plunge right in? Because it made no sense to read out one question when I've received so many on asking me to comment. So I will say up front, Oprah is a real professional. Oprah knows how to milk a cow so it gives the maximum amount of milk. And she has done a very good job. It is also obvious that Oprah really likes Meghan. Which doesn't surprise me, because there is a solidarity amongst people like Oprah and Meghan, which, and I'm now referring to a racial solidarity, that is slightly discomforting when it is not fairly applied. You know, we need to remember that for years, Robert Mugabe was destroying the lives of Zimbabweans, white and black. And none of the African heads of state would criticize him. There is a protocol which prevents, ostensibly, certain people from criticizing their own kind. I happen to think that is extremely unhealthy, because the color of someone's skin should make absolutely no difference, nor the class that they come from, nor the religion that they are, nor anything that they cannot help. You can't help your color, you can't help your class, you can't help your religion. Well, I suppose you could change it, but still. therefore, I will say, I was very uncomfortable with the way the race card was being played and how the race situation was being milked. Very unfairly, as it turns out, but we'll get to that in a moment. So the first thing that occurred to me, I think I have 38 points that I made notes throughout. And may I say that Meghan comes across initially very well, which is no surprise to me, because Meghan, as I have tried to point out to her detractors in my book, is bright and resourceful, and Meghan is the consummate actress. She usually overplays her hand, as indeed she did in this interview, but it doesn't alter the fact that if she could avoid overindulgence and overconfidence, she would be very good at basically telling a story that has very little grounding in facts and very little substance. She comes across, and she did for the first maybe 3/4 of an hour, I think, she came across really well, very likable. She's very good at projecting her emotions and letting everybody know how much she suffered. Because, I mean, you need to understand that Meghan gave up an awful lot to become a princess and a duchess. And she's very mindful of it, because she actually even alludes to it in the interview, how that she gave up her life and she gave up her career. The fact of the matter is, she'd been making plans for the previous 2 years because she knew her career was coming to an end in terms of Suits, and she was never going to be the star that she had hoped she would be. So she gave up really something that she was on the tail end of. And she gave up her life. You know, she gave up her life. I mean, this life where she didn't even own a house, where she had a lifestyle blog, which did very well, incidentally, but which was, you know, focusing on top-end lifestyle. You know, it was a roadmap for arrivists and ignoramuses who have come up in the world and want to better themselves. And I have nothing against people who come up in the world and want to better themselves. But let's not pretend it was not about championing people of color. It was not about championing the underdog. It was about merching products that she could get involved with, that she could make money with, and then meeting men like Corey Vitiello, who she targeted and who she would then ask to go on the blog, and also meeting celebrities, that reaching out to them. So if we can plunge in now, the first point that occurs to me is Meghan's very farcical claim that Doria never knew anything about an interview that Diana gave. Never. It came as a huge surprise to Doria. The subtext being that Meghan had to inform her when Meghan was going to replicate the Diana disaster with Martin Bashir, with Oprah. Doria knew nothing about it because, of course, Doria and Meghan are just roots people. They're authentic, and she does use the word authentic quite a lot. Dead giveaway, by the way, for people who are phony when they use the word authentic a lot. It's like people without any background in breeding using the word class, another word that she loves using. But anyway, so there's that. She then launches into a diatribe of denialism of what day-to-day life in the royal family was going to be like. Well, at that point, I tell you, I had to laugh, because this is a woman who had been living with Harry for the previous year and didn't know what the day-to-day life of royalty was all about. I mean, you know, you couldn't make it up. But I mean, the thing about Meghan is, like with many very overconfident people, she thinks if she decrees that pink is green, everybody's going to say, oh, yes, of course, pink is green. And there I was all along thinking pink was pink. Oh, stupid me. No, stupid her. She then goes into a rather touching and very revealing incident of when she first met the Queen. And Harry taught her how to practice curtsying. And this is a very interesting and important point, because this is Meghan going to have to curtsy to the Queen in private. And Meghan makes the point that she was really surprised that there was all of this protocol in private. She thought that it was just in public. So in other words, she thought royalty is, and the customs of royalty, and the breeding and good manners that go along with breeding were something that you take on and put off like a coat. And Harry explained to her, no, this is what's done always. And he taught her to curtsy, and she curtsied. Right there, anybody with any brains in their head would realize that you are entering a completely different world with different values. And it is not up to you to modernize and to change. Two words that she uses a lot. And you are entering a traditional world with traditions. And it is not in your place to overthrow those traditions. But so if you know what you're looking for, even when the interview is going really well for Meghan, she's actually shooting herself in the foot. But of course, this is not something that I would imagine the average American, who would not be as knowledgeable about boards, increasing her earning power and popularity in America by making her out to be a very reasonable, very sweet, very defenseless, very eager to please, very kind and loving person who was basically put through the ringer, because there is throughout this interview a discomfiting subtext of Diana and what happened with Diana and how it can't happen to Meghan, and this is Harry's great fear. And I mean, the two things are as the opposite as fish and fowl. Meghan then perpetuates the myth that she knew nothing about the family. She says, thank God for not having known anything about the family. Oh gosh, well, not according to the people with whom she grew up, not according to people who knew her, not according to people who saw Andrew Morton's books, my books, and other books on the royal family, especially on Diana, on her bookshelf. I'm afraid she knew nothing. Yes, that's as believable as when she said that she didn't know who Harry was. Oh gosh, you really do have to laugh. Anyway, it then emerges that they were married 3 days before the ceremony because they just wanted it to be nice and quiet and intimate, which is really sweet, but shows a degree of romanticism that was not going to bode well for the future. Because why would you be having a secret, quiet wedding like you're running away and eloping? And it's just going to be the two of you. Just so romantic. There's an element of hyper-emotionalism that runs throughout this whole interview and runs throughout Meghan's character and conduct that helps to explain why she has been the failure that she has been in royal terms. Because I'm afraid a woman well over 35, getting married to a man, any man, and it's not her first marriage, has to have 2 ceremonies. I mean, who's she trying to kid? I leave you with that thought. I know who I think she was trying to kid. Then the great revelation is how wronged Meghan has been. She's been completely wronged. And this is now where the woe is me, the pity party begins in a major way. That she is the press are having a go at her. Now remember, this is when Meghan and Harry are the most popular couple in the country. And Meghan is effectively the most popular female member of the royal family after the Queen. So wait for the pity party to start. Kate made me cry. I didn't make Kate cry. Kate made me cry. And when I wanted the palace to correct the lie, they refused to do it. The self-pity, the focus on self, the complete lack of maturity, the lack of proportion, the lack of anything character-driven. It's all about me and my sensations and my comfort. Anyway, next one. I suppose I should say, before moving on to the next one, that she does make the point that Catherine apologised. And she doesn't really have anything nasty to say about Catherine. In fact, she's very careful, pretty much, not to say anything nasty about any particular one member of the royal family. But then, in the next breath, to cast shade over them in very covert ways, because she is the past mistress of the nasty comment that gets slipped in there, where, you know, oh, I really love them, they're really nice, but you know, really they're not all they're made out to be, sort of thing. Anyway, she then, with Oprah, they then go into the business of, we're now getting to race. And we need to remember that Britain is a racist country, that the royal family is racist, the press are racist, and the fact that Meghan was so popular and embraced by everybody was the absolute proof that everybody was racist. I mean, the logic and lack of it is stupendous. So they bring up comparisons between Catherine's behavior and Meghan's behavior, and that Catherine was praised for cradling her baby bump, and that Meghan was decried for doing the same. What they completely ignore.
However, the damage was done. The mere suggestion of racism within the royal family, an institution long seen as a symbol of tradition and stability, was deeply damaging. It forced a nation to confront its own complicated history with race and colonialism. The palace issued a carefully worded statement expressing concern but ultimately failing to quell the growing public outcry. The Oprah interview wasn't just about race, it was also about mental health. Meghan spoke candidly about her struggles with suicidal thoughts, revealing the profound impact that royal life had had on her well-being. She described feeling isolated and unsupported, her pleas for help seemingly ignored. This raw and honest confession resonated with millions around the world. It shone a light on the often hidden struggles of those living with mental health issues, even within the seemingly gilded cages of royalty. Meghan's decision to speak out was both brave and necessary, helping to break down the stigma surrounding mental health.
Is the fact that Catherine might have held her stomach once or twice the way everybody, pregnant or not pregnant, does at certain times. But she wasn't hanging on to that bump as if she had jumped off the Titanic when it was sinking and was hanging on to the life raft for all it was worth. Catherine was not a helicopter hovering over her bump. She might have very occasionally touched it. She did not fix upon it the way Meghan fixed upon hers. And it's not racism that's the issue here. Oprah and Meghan, it's tastelessness, it's obscenity, it's vulgarity. It is that no pregnant woman with modesty draws attention to the fact constantly and needlessly that she got Rogered and therefore is carrying a seed. It's common, it's vulgar, and it's just not done. It is tasteless. And it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, yellow, pink, or green. It is tasteless. There's also the business which they come up with that Catherine likes avocados and that Meghan was criticised for liking avocados. Well, you could say there was more merit in that comparison, except that Meghan pushed avocados in a way that Catherine never did. You know, Meghan wrote as well as stated on numerous occasions that there is nothing that a trip to the beach and an avocado can't cure. There's a difference in degree here. And this is what neither Oprah nor Meghan care to acknowledge, as they are racially profiling people and stacking the decks in favor of a false narrative about the British people being racist. So, the next one is, and advocating women's rights. No voice. Meghan is mixed race. She's spent the last several years advocating for women's rights. And now all of a sudden she's married into the royal family. And not even before, actually, before she marries into the royal family, she's told that the way to deal with the press is just to say no comment and keep out of the press. Well, I'm struggling to understand why, on the one hand, Meghan would say that she didn't want press attention, but on the other hand, wanted her voice to be heard constantly and never-endingly. Through the press. I mean, there's an anomaly there that strikes me as very contradictory. She then goes into the fact that she thought that she was being protected initially. Whatever she means by protected is something else again, because Meghan is a very interesting character. She does not define, and she does not ever particularize, and there's no detail. It's all the clean brush strokes, you know, protected. She thought she was being protected by the palace, and she thought she was being protected by the royal family. And she understood that she had to lie low and keep stum. That's what they do, darling. That's what all royal families do. They don't contemplate their navel in public. Diana did it and lived to regret it. Harry and Meghan have been doing it now for well over a year. They have fled to California to have a private life and get away from the press and have teams of PR people making sure that they are in the media 3 and 4 times a week. Meghan then casts shade brilliantly on the courtiers, because she is laying the ground for why she has had to leave this cruel establishment so that she can milk and merch the royal connection for all it's worth. And she can't come out openly and say, listen, I'm a money-grubbing businesswoman. I married this dolt. You know, whether I love him or not is beside the point. I'm gonna make as much money as I can, and nobody's gonna stop me. And I don't care that royalty doesn't get freebies. I want my freebies, and I want what I don't get free. I want to sell, and I want to get my pound of flesh. Very, very much the Merchant of Venice, our Meghan is. And she makes the point, slipping it in, that the royal family, and this is in the early days now, and the courtiers, she discovers that they're not protecting her. They're not protecting her. Because they're not denying each and every inaccurate story about her. And she demands, and this is the subtext of what she's saying, whether people realize it or not, this is the ordinary meaning of her words, that they're not denying each and every story that is inaccurate, and they tell her, no, we simply don't deny that sort of thing, just leave it. That's not good enough for Megs, because she says, well, they lie about other people. You know, the palace lies to protect other members of the royal family. Why can't they speak the truth about me? Well, I've got news for you, Meghan. You're really lucky they didn't speak the truth about you. And you're really lucky that the press in Britain, for all your complaints, have so far still never spoken the unexpurgated truth about you, because then you really wouldn't be able to appear on Oprah or anywhere with the convincing display of innocence that you have put forth. She then rather touchingly goes on to, because she's clever, she makes absolutely sure that she never says a word against the Queen. She manages to put the boot in with Catherine, William, and Charles, but she never says anything untoward about the Queen, and in fact goes out of her way to say that on that first engagement, the one where she joined the Queen on the train, and she wore that white Givenchy dress with a black belt and no hat, having been told by Angela Kelly that she should wear a hat, and she point blank refused to do so. She says how lovely the Queen was to her, and how the Queen gave her a pair of pearl earrings and a necklace. So she makes the point that the Queen was good to her. Then she quickly lapses from that into how lonely she was. I mean, I know as a fact from people that Meghan has studied my books on Diana. And I have to tell you, I had a discomforting experience at times during that interview, because it was almost as if she had torn pages out of my book and was mimicking the scenarios. This, of course, is a very clever move. It works well with Harry, who is clearly very disturbed and very mixed up and very dumb, as well as very immature. It also works well with people who like a David and Goliath scenario, you know, which Diana was very good at manipulating that scenario as well. You know, poor little me, I'm just an earl's daughter, I'm just the Princess of Wales, against this horrid royal family and these horrid people who run it. Meghan's doing the same thing, and Harry is going along with it, which is really interesting. I think he's going to live to regret it, but let's see when. She then, having laid the ground for us to sympathize with her on the grounds of how lonely she was, lonely, and she pretends that she was isolated. I mean, she says at one stage that she didn't go out for 2 months, I think, maybe once or twice in 2 months. I mean, you know, I know people who know Harry and Meghan very well, and I have to tell you, they had a riotous social life. They were constantly out and about with people. With the passage of time, fewer and fewer members of the aristocracy, and fewer of his friends and more of her friends. And if Meghan was lonely, she has only herself to blame. However, in this pity fest that we are being treated to, she has to lay the ground for how disadvantaged she was. She has been elevated to a position of great disadvantage and therefore was very lonely. I will actually at this point, it just occurred to me, make actually a parallel. My mother, who was a malignant narcissist and whom I wrote a book about, was whenever you said to Mummy, "Mummy, how are you?" "Oh, I'm lonesome." Evidently, loneliness or lonesomeness, or however you want to put it, goes along with a certain type of disordered personality. And since that point has just occurred to me, I will make it before going on to the fact that having got your sympathy, oh, poor lonely me, because there are personality disorders. Narcissism is slightly one, but sociopathy is a rather more intense one that demands that everybody sympathize with the sociopath. So at the very moment that they are setting up the situation to gouge your eyes out, you must be sympathizing with them. So, having laid the ground very cleverly, she now goes in for the kill. She lets drop that Harry's family, and neither of them is going to say which one. They don't actually even say whether they were awake or asleep when this happened. So they're going to protect the person as they're throwing the rest of the family as well under the bus. That there was family speculation about the baby's color and what color the baby was going to come out as. Well, that is presented as if the family was being racist. I think we need to look at it very carefully. And I will qualify all of this by saying that when Meghan got pregnant, one of the royals phoned me up because I'm Jamaican. Everybody knows I'm Jamaican, and everybody knows that in Jamaica you have a rare cocktail of mixtures, and there are many Jamaicans who have a touch of the tar brush, and there are many Jamaicans who don't, but there are many Jamaicans who do, and everybody knows that Jamaicans are rarely ace where colour is concerned. I was duly phoned up and asked, what did I think the baby would look like? And I said something I've often said before. I said, Meghan is 1/4 black, contrary to popular belief, is not black. Her mother is half black. Her mother is what Jamaicans would call brown. She's not black. Just look at her colour. Even listen to what Meghan says describing her mother's colour. Honey-coloured is not black. Honey-coloured is honey-coloured. So if you also study Doria Ragland's ancestry, you'll see she has an awful lot of white blood. If she's not 50% white, she's certainly 40% white, I would have said. That means that Meghan is approximately 1/4 black, which means that Archie would be 1/8 black. And I know many people in Jamaica who are 1/8 black and look absolutely white. In fact, in Jamaica, there is an expression that black blood wash out quick, quick, quick. Shiny blood is the thing that stick. Which I will translate. Black blood washes out very quickly, but Chinese blood is the thing that sticks. And it's true, because if you are 1/16 Chinese, there's usually some cast to your features that indicates this. While if you are 1/16 black, you usually look absolutely white. And in fact, I pointed out that there are various members of the royal family who have black blood and who look absolutely white. And the reaction I got was, oh, that's a pity, because it would be wonderful if the baby could be cafe au lait. So it's really interesting that I have this conversation with a certain royal when Meghan is pregnant, and they are indicating to me that the royal family is hoping that the baby is a little bit, if not a lot, dusky. And there is Meghan trying to make out the absolute opposite, that the speculation was due to racism. And also, let's put this in its proper context. If you have a couple, she's a blue-eyed blonde, he's a brown-eyed brunette, aren't they going to speculate as to whether the baby's going to take after the colouring of the mother or the father? I mean, these are perfectly natural conversations. But you see where ground is laid at every turn by Meghan and Harry and Oprah, it's got to be said, to have a negative spin put on anything to do with colour, to suggest that the royal family and the British people are colour prejudiced. And that's really important. We then get onto the business of, are you okay? She claims that she was suffering, that they weren't being protected, that she didn't feel safe. She didn't feel safe. And when she goes on and on about protection, what she's actually talking about is that she and Harry tried to get the royal family and the Buckingham Palace press office and the courtiers to muzzle the press so that her conduct, which became increasingly obvious, was inflammatory and provocative would not be commented upon. It's really interesting, if you know what really went on, that she wasn't not being protected. In fact, she was being protected because the palace were suppressing an awful lot of negative stuff about her and begging editors not to write how abusive Meghan was to staff. That, for instance, is one thing that they shied away from writing, that Meghan's behavior towards the staff was unacceptable. None of that was written about at the time. And so the pity fest is something that we really need to take on board and discount. But if you don't know what you're dealing with, she's very convincing and comes across very convincingly as having taken advantage of. Having then brought up the question of the colour of the baby's skin, she then links it to the fact that Archie was not going to be made a prince. And this to her was completely unacceptable and unintelligible, because Archie was going to be the first British prince who was mixed race. Well, let me stop her right there. Harry and William are mixed race. They have Indian blood. Indians and Mongoloids, Europeans are Caucasians. So two completely different races right there. Also, all the royal family has African blood, as I made clear in my book, People of Colour and the Royals. They may not be generally acknowledged as being mixed race, but they are indubitably mixed race. So she would have been more accurate had she said that the baby was going to be the first mixed race member of the royal family that was acknowledged generally by the public. But it is outrageous that she very dexterously, because Meghan Markle is a very dexterous manipulator. She is as smooth as silk, and she does it very nicely and quietly, and, just slips the poison in there. She is oleaginous. She is so smooth. That the reason why the baby wasn't being made a prince was because he was mixed race, and because they were worried he was going to look brown. They wanted him to look brown, and she knows it. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, not only did they want him to look browner than he looks, but no great-grandson of the monarch is entitled to the rank of prince. He is, except the great-grandchildren, except for the firstborn son of the Prince of Wales. It was all very carefully laid down in November 1917. It was gazetted in December 1917 by George V. It is there in black and white. The second and other sons of the Prince of Wales, their children assume the rank of Duke They do not assume the rank of prince. They assume a ducal rank, which means that Archie would, if he were legitimate, be the Earl of Dumbarton, not Prince Archie of Sussex. So there again, she's thrown a complete red herring into the pot, and a very damaging one as well, because Meghan Markle seems intent on detrimentally affecting race relations in this country and throughout the Commonwealth, so that the royal family will be accused of racial prejudice which they do not possess. She also says that it's a big thing for her and Harry that the baby wasn't going to be given security. The baby couldn't even walk. The baby, I mean, it's ridiculous. Why would the baby be given security? Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice don't have security. So why would their baby have security? It just, you see, the rules are not supposed to apply to them. And when they do, they come out with all sorts of rubbish to try to get the rules changed in their favor. And if the rules are not changed in their favor, they are going to be as vicious and vitriolic and unfair as they possibly can be to punish those who have refused to give them their way. She then makes the point that she would have been and was an invaluable representative for people of colour throughout the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth, of course, has hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people of colour. And and she's right, it would have been, and this has always been one of my complaints about the fact that Meghan fluffed things the way she did, that it was such a golden opportunity for a person of colour to actually be visibly representing people of colour all over the world. She makes that point. What she does not say, and tries to fob it off onto everybody else, is that she is the one who was not interested in performing in the role. And that's the fact. So the pity fest continues with Meghan again bemoaning the fact that they wouldn't protect me, and it was unsurvivable. And she then goes into a whole palaver about how when she was pregnant with Archie, I didn't want to be alive anymore. So she went to the palace and tried to get help. I mean, she could have gone to a psychiatrist, because personally speaking, I think that's really what she needs. But I don't think that Meghan's curable. I think that Meghan has a serious personality disorder for which she must be pitied. But let's save our sympathy for those who are her victims, because they are legion. So having tried to get them to this pity fest and protect me, in other words, muzzle the press. When she says protect me, she means muzzling the press, because she was really absolutely scared that some of what was being said would actually end up being publicized. And most of it has not been so far, I've got to tell you. There's a whole load of skeletons in that basement, readily and waiting to rattle. And so then she goes to HR. Can you imagine a member of the royal family going to human resources and they inform her she's not an employee and there's nothing they can do to help. What she's really saying is, and let's cut to the chase, is that she was trying every trick in the book to get the palace to muzzle the press, and the palace were refusing to do so. Because as I pointed out in my book, and Harry makes the point when he enters the picture of the interview, that there is a symbiotic relationship between the British media and the British royal family. He's fully aware of it. She is fully aware of it. But they were intent on changing the game, notwithstanding the fact that we live in a constitutional democracy and a constitutional monarchy that assures press freedoms. This was of no interest to her. And she tried to get human resources using her health, her mental health. Well, that, of course, worked wonders with Harry, because that's a trick that Diana tried to pull, but Charles wasn't buying it. You know, as I have pointed out previously, when Diana said that she was trying to kill herself with a potato peeler, and I asked her where were the scars, and she said there weren't any. I said, well, you can't peel yourself to death in any way. I mean, it's ludicrous, ludicrous. But Diana, who was troubled, tried to play the threat of suicide without ever intending to carry it out. Harry is amenable to this. Meghan knows this, and she decided that she was going to use that card to maneuver him out of a situation that she didn't want. And I'll tell you my opinion why she didn't want it. By the time Archie was gestating, it was obvious to Meghan that she was an ensemble player yet again. She wanted to be the star. She understood she would never be the star of the royal show any more than she had been the star of Suits. And this was a terrible, terrible realization for her to reach. And at that point, she looked around and saw what her options were and thought, I'm going to do a Diana, I'm going to bolt, and I'm going to merch it. Diana wasn't interested in merching it, but Meghan was interested in merching it and has merched it. So let's cut to the chase where that's all. But she pressed Harry's buttons. She pressed Harry's buttons and Harry fell for the lie. And I'm sorry, it's a lie. There is no way that Meghan Markle, unless she has had a complete change of personality, could have been suicidal at the very moment that she had significantly upgraded herself. She wasn't suicidal all those years that she went on go-sees and was rejected. It's rubbish. It is just rubbish. Mental health is a hot topic, especially amongst a certain type of person who rarely doesn't have mental health problems, but is using mental health.
The Oprah interview provided a platform for Harry and Meghan to explain their decision to step back from their roles as senior royals. They cited the relentless media intrusion, lack of support from the institution, and concerns for their safety and well-being as key factors in their decision. This unprecedented move, dubbed Megxit by the press, sent shockwaves through the monarchy and beyond. It challenged the very notion of duty and sacrifice that had long been synonymous with royalty. The Sussexes' decision to prioritise their own happiness and well-being over their royal obligations divided public opinion, with some applauding their courage while others condemned their perceived selfishness. In the heart of this great land, a tension simmers. It's, well, a palpable divide, visible in every corner of the nation. From bustling cities to quiet rural towns, the differences are stark. Yet amidst the discord, there's a shared hope, a desire for unity and understanding. It's a complex tapestry of diverse voices, each contributing to the nation's rich narrative. And, it's this very diversity that holds the promise of a brighter, more united future.
To justify misconduct. I know what mental health is all about. I've lived with people who were seriously mentally ill. And I have to tell you, people with personality disorders don't suffer from mental ill health. They suffer from a personality disorder that allows them to ride roughshod over everyone. That is not the same thing as being mentally ill. There is a difference. However, Oprah is into mental health. She and Harry, as they made sure they plugged it, are working on something, a show, so that gets in a little plug. And so, of course, the pity fest continues. Because God forbid that these overprivileged brats and Oprah, who has worked very hard, but let's face facts, Oprah is overprivileged as well. Oprah's one of the richest women in the world. I don't think I regard any of them as suitable to be preaching about mental health. They're not qualified. Harry's qualified to speak about mental illness. Meghan's qualified to speak about personality disorders. Oprah is qualified to ask questions, but I mean, it's so beyond belief that these people can be so cynically using the pain and distress of others to make money for themselves and gain attention for themselves. So then, of course, it's revealed that the baby is a girl. They haven't yet revealed the name. And Oprah does mention just before the revelation about, are they afraid of a backlash? And Meghan, of course, puts the boot in, and this time she puts the boot in right to the royal family when she says that the firm, and the firm in royal lingo means the royal family. The palace means the courtiers. So let's be very clear about who Meghan is speaking about. She said the firm were perpetuating falsehoods about us. She's not afraid of a backlash. She's given up so much already. What has she given up? She's given up being a civil servant in a tiara, according to her. She's given up giving her time away free to the suffering in the Commonwealth and in Britain, and giving up all of that which would have been unpaid to run charities where they will benefit financially and merch themselves where they will benefit financially. What she's given up is lack of payment. What she is heading towards is being paid for everything. But of course, that's really necessary, because come the day that Meghan wants to leave Harry, had she stayed in the royal family, she would have left with little or nothing, in much the same way that Sarah left with little or nothing. That's how things work in royal families. The money is tied up so carefully that any adventurous departing discovers that she is departing with a very light pocket. However, by moving the center of operations to California, where everything can be merged, if there is a divorce, and some people would say when there is a divorce, Meghan will walk with laden pockets. I just make the point. Possibly again. Of course, this is going to be too long if I continue particularizing. I'm going to have to start to really just wrap things up. Halfway into the interview, Meghan actually overplays her hand. And up until that point, she actually has come across as sweet, soft, sensitive, wounded, in pain. Then she over-eggs the pudding. She can't help over-egging the pudding. She is such a drama queen. She can't help over-egging the pudding. And at that point, she begins to lose the sympathy of a rational viewer. She starts to say that she had to leave because of a lack of support and understanding from the firm. She wasn't getting what she wanted. She pressed Harry's buttons. She said that she was suicidal. Why? Because they weren't denying stories about her. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, I mean, let me tell you something. I've had far worse publicity for far longer than Meghan ever had it. Meghan's only had bad publicity for the last 2 years. I had appalling publicity for 2 decades, all based on lies. And then for another 2 decades, sometimes based on lies. And does it make you suicidal? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's very unpleasant to have to live with. Does it make you suicidal? No. Does it mean that you're to stop giving away the opportunity to be a public servant and benefit people in the national life and in the Commonwealth? No. Does it mean that it's a good excuse to jump ship and start to prostitute your position to make as much money for yourself as possible? I would respectfully say no. And at this point, Harry joins Meghan. And we now have a real pity fest. We're actually gorging ourselves on victimhood at this point. And we're also gorging ourselves on shade. Shade, shade. Very subtly done, but shade nevertheless. Oprah asks Harry if he blindsided the Queen with the Brexit announcement. Harry denies that he blindsided the Queen. Well, Buckingham Palace itself announced at the time that he blindsided the Queen, and that was announced with the Queen's consent and approval. So I would sooner believe the Queen's mouthpiece than Meghan's mouthpiece. So let's leave that one at that. Harry then goes into the pity fest of how terrible it is to be royal. And I'll tell you something, you know, privilege has a price. Privilege has responsibilities. Whether you are royal or the progeny of a multi-billionaire or an aristocrat or just from a good, well-bred family that has a position to play in local society, position has a price. It's got its privileges and it's got its downside. And Harry and Meghan seem not able to get their heads around that fact. They seem to think that it should all be to their benefit, and what they don't want to do becomes affecting their mental health. They're spoiled brats, and they rarely begin to come across as super spoiled brats. First she, then he. And I mean, because most people really don't know anything about the royal world and about life in what shall we say is privileged circles, you know, they don't understand that when Harry is saying that he was born trapped, and when Harry's saying that his father and his brother are entrapped environmentally, and you know, and that Meghan showed him that he was trapped environmentally, and he thought, this isn't going to end well. Meghan, I suppose, is going to commit suicide. Oh, of course she wasn't going to commit suicide. She simply needed to find a way to remove him from the scenario so she could make money. But anyway, you know, William and Prince Charles are trapped. I'm trapped. I would imagine most of you who are listening to this are trapped by your circumstances as well. Nobody has absolute freedom. Nobody. And every role in life has its upside and its downside. And they seem to think that if they confuse the issue and make out that their downside was far more onerous than it was, that will allow them to gorge themselves on all of the privileges while divesting themselves of all of the responsibilities. Harry then makes a very interesting point, and the point is that Meghan was so successful on the Australian tour that that's when everything changed. And we are meant to believe, listening to Meghan and Harry, that the royal family got insanely jealous because Meghan was such a success, like Diana had been such a success, and Charles was jealous of Diana. And Harry's not jealous of Meghan, but everybody else in the family was jealous of Meghan. And they didn't want to put Megsy baby and H to the good use that they were able to be put to if everybody would listen to them and do exactly as they pleased. And therefore, this was one of the reasons why they had to leave. Because they were not being promoted above their station, which is what it amounts to. Their overambition, I've got to tell you, is so apparent at this stage. People, if they don't understand the context, will think, oh yeah, of course, Harry and Meghan should have been exploited more. They should have been sent to do this, that, and the other. Yeah, everybody should have listened to them. Harry and Meghan wanted the palace to turn them into the emperor and empress of the Commonwealth. That's what they wanted. They wanted the palace to put them ahead of William and Catherine and Charles and Camilla and the Queen. How does that work? Anyway, this is going to be too long, so I'm going to need to start to wrap it up. Meghan states that she had no training when she joined the family, that she didn't even know the national anthem. Sweetie pie, you're very bright. You're a real hustler. You've worked your way up from a privileged upper middle class life to royalty. You don't know how to Google British national anthem? You need to be taught that. You see, she falls into helpless mode. If you know the games she plays, you get hints of them in this interview. One of them is, I'm so helpless. Everybody has to help me. I don't know anything. Well, she certainly knows how to go to California and instruct PR people to make her the most popular and talked about individual on earth, and to give her the largest Instagram following on earth. I don't see how she would have not known to look up what the national anthem means. Also, she seems to forget that we know that she was living with Harry for a year before they got married. She therefore knew all that there was to know about the lifestyle, and anything else is, quite frankly, lies. She accuses the royal family of perpetuating lies about her. I now accuse her of perpetuating lies about them and about everybody with whom she came into contact that she has subsequently denigrated. Harry does admit that Diana would have been disappointed in him and that she would have been angry, and he's absolutely right. I've already made that point. I've also made the point that she only wanted her children to be happy, which is what he's made as well. But Diana would have been absolutely furious, and justly so too. You cannot have long-term happiness, Harry, if you sell yourself and everybody out. Oprah then, of course, because she is a good interviewer. She may be allowing them to play the race card for all it's worth, but she's also getting in her penetrating questions when it suits her. Doesn't suit her in terms of race. Doesn't suit her to actually blow the whistle on the fact that the whole thing is a con, to merch themselves and to use race and the race card as a way of boosting themselves while diminishing others. But she does get into questions about his relationship with his father, which Harry admits is not good, that his father, according to Harry, which is true, I think I mentioned it in my book, that Charles refused to take his calls, and that William was beyond furious, and he says there is space between him and William. Yeah, canyon-esque space at the very least. rather more, I think, like Jupiter and Mars. Not exactly cohesive. Then, of course, Oprah reverts back to the person who made the observation about what the complexion of the baby might be. Harry refuses to divulge it. He says he's not going to share that. Well, of course he's not going to share it, because they have put a spin on something that was not pejorative, that was not negative, that was perfectly natural. And I would imagine that he and Meghan might actually have speculated whether Archie or the daughter would be a ginger. So is that anti-ginger? I wouldn't have thought so, but then, I'm consistent. They are wildly inconsistent. And we end more or less on the note of Meghan asserting life is about storytelling, about the stories we tell ourselves. The fantasist and the self-hypnotist comes right out and says it. Life is about storytelling and the stories we tell ourselves. This is a girl who was born into a relatively prosperous mixed-race family that was perfectly blended. Despite being mixed race, passed usually for white, lived in virtually a totally white world all her life, chose to live in a white world. When she was at Northwestern University, she could have joined a black sorority. She joined the whitest sorority. Let's just remember that. But this woman, this beneficiary of white privilege, when she discovers latterly in her career that she can use the little bit of black blood that she has to her advantage, starts to beat the color drum in the most destructive and divisive way possible, because what she is doing is a very destructive, and if she succeeds, will set back race relations by at least a generation, maybe even two. She lies to herself, and she lies to Harry, and she lies to everybody else about her story. No, Meghan, you did not pay for yourself through school and university. No, Meghan, your father paid for it. No, Meghan, your father did not interfere with you. No, Meghan, your father was not a bad man. He was a very good father. 2 weeks before you met Harry, you were saying what a wonderful man he was. Now you're trying to make out that he was a monster. You're trying to make out that the British people who welcomed you with open arms, and the British royal family who welcomed you in a way they have never ever embraced any other woman who entered the royal family, or any other person, irrespective of their class and colour. No princess that married into the royal family was ever embraced the way you were. No aristocrat who married into the royal family was ever embraced the way you were. No middle-class girl, and I, in that number, mention Catherine Cambridge and Sophie Wessex. They were not embraced the way you were. And you have the unmitigated gall to tell yourself the story, and now are trying to tell the world the story that you were disadvantaged and deprived, and that you were unprotected, and that you were treated so badly that it made you suicidal, and you had to flee to California, which is where your ambitions and origins are, and where you hope to make yourself into a huge superstar, as well as a multimillionaires or a billionaires. That is your story. My interpretation of it is that you are an ingrate and a bare-faced liar. I know that Oprah ends it on a very romantic note, with Harry saying that Meghan saved his life. I didn't know it was in danger before, but let's see what happens hereafter. And Meghan says, of course, Harry saved her life and Archie's life. Well, I'm not going to end this on a sour note. I am going to end this on a positive note. This book, Red, White and True, Many Tears Rescue, by Sylvia Van Atter. I would ask anybody who loves animals to buy this book. She runs a rescue for dogs, and the only source of income in the pandemic times is through people who buy this book. I'm going to have the details of it posted following this. And I would implore any of you who loves animals to buy the book, even if you don't read it. It's £15 a book, and it will go towards helping to keep the charity afloat, because they get no money from anybody else, and they rescue dogs that would otherwise be put down. So, on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed this. It's rather longer than I hoped it would be. Sorry about that. So if you would like to like, subscribe, press the notification bell and share, I would be very grateful. And please keep the questions coming in. God bless.
Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Still with me is Imane, Richard Tice and Tricia Gore. I left you on a cliffhanger, a tease of all teases. We'll play it again now, just to remind you in case you missed it.
I watched you yesterday and the day before. I watched you be gaslit by two.
You're so lost, Tricia. Seriously, you don't know anything. Slam. Oh my goodness, these teacups, they're super old, you know. Look, Harry and Meghan are in love. Can't you see it? It's so clear. Love? Ha, don't make me laugh. She's an actress, remember? It's all fake. Just like my niece Sarah's school play. All show, no real stuff. That's just... so narrow-minded. You don't know her. You don't know their story. It's like judging a book by its cover. Oh, I know enough. They've turned against the royal family. They're They're all about the money and being famous. It's totally shameful. Reminds me of that politician. What was his name? The one with the big secret affair? All show, no good character. They're to live their own lives. It's the 21st century. Those old-fashioned rules don't matter anymore. It's like telling women they can't vote. Crazy.
Ignorant black women, I actually felt quite sorry for you. So I want to say, welcome to the club, Piers Morgan. How does it feel to be gaslit when claiming something is racism? How does it feel? It's annoying, right? It's annoying.
Well, Tricia, here's your chance to respond. This was, of course, about our quite fiery debate in which I got very exercised about the fact that Meghan and Harry for 2 years led the world to believe that the palace had been racist about the skin colour of their baby. And then they decided to turn around and say, actually, we never meant that at all, which I thought was deplorable. You defended it, and that was Iman's verdict on your defence. I was basically getting gaslit. What's your response?
Not so much the gaslit bit, but I guess Iman and I would have to agree to disagree. I wouldn't call anybody ignorant just because they don't agree with my point of view. And I don't think it's helpful, especially when we're discussing something like racism, and you know, one black person calling another person ignorant because they don't agree. That I find sad. I'm saddened by that, and you know, so I'm not going to pick a fight with Iman about that because I've seen that happen. You know, I've worked in the media for 35 years. I know how that game's played. So that would be my only comment. She's entitled to her view. You're entitled to your view. I'm entitled to my view. But I actually think it's quite disgraceful to label someone ignorant purely because they don't agree with you.
So it's not acceptable to call someone ignorant, but you can call them disgraceful. Iman?
Well,
no, I said doing it is disgraceful.
Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same thing. You just called it disgraceful.
I'm saying...
Iman, you're disgraceful for calling Tricia ignorant.
I think it's...
Well, Tricia, we just heard you. You just said she was disgraceful. So let her answer the charge of being a disgrace.
I didn't say she was disgraceful.
OK, Iman, you're a disgrace for calling Tricia ignorant.
I think I'm awesome, personally, so I just want to throw that out there. Secondly, I never called you ignorant because you didn't agree with my opinion. I called you ignorant because you have a lack of knowledge. There's a clear difference, and it was never about a view. It's about just understanding facts. And when we talk about unconscious bias, that's based on feeling. That is a fact, Tricia. So it's not about me and you disagreeing as two black women. I'm going to call you ignorant in spite of your colour if you have a lack of knowledge. Simple as that.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, Tricia, come on, you've got to answer the charge. It was basically your ignorance as in lack of knowledge of the subject you were talking about.
If somebody decides that I'm ignorant, I'm not going to sit here and try to dissuade them otherwise. They've quite clearly made up their minds. If Iman wants to call me ignorant and thinks of me as ignorant, what have you, fine, go ahead.
Tricia, you did a lot of damage that day. You did a lot of damage and I had to come along and fix it. Just like Harry did a lot of damage and other people had to come along and fix it. Me, Shola, Kiande, we had to come along and fix your dirty wax. You know what? I don't have time for people like you when you come on national TV spewing garbage. And you're right. I'll actually add to your second point. I don't want to argue because I'm a bit more... In fact, I don't believe black women should come onto TV arguing, so I'll just leave it at that. I called you ignorant because of your lack of knowledge. It kind of ends there, basically.
I mean, Tricia, what I would say as the token white man in this debate is I would say this about what happened last week. I was surprised, actually, that you, with all your experience of broadcasting and journalism, you're a smart person. Even you, when you heard Harry basically gaslighting the world by saying, it was the media that said that this was racism. We didn't say that. And then you literally watch back exactly what they said to Oprah Winfrey. And they were blatantly accusing a senior member of the royal family of being racist about their unborn child's skin colour. I was surprised that you couldn't find it in yourself, notwithstanding your support for them, but as a black woman, to understand the damage that did in playing the race card as strongly as they did to Oprah Winfrey, and then expecting 2 years later, we would all just sit back when they go, we didn't mean it as racism, and we'd all go, oh, that's all right then. After 2 years of incessant headlines around the world.
Clink. They to be royals. They knew the rules. And now they're making the Queen look bad. Honestly, the disrespect. My grandmother would be rolling over in her grave. The Queen is a strong woman. I think, she gets it. It's the gossip newspapers that are making a big deal out of nothing, always causing trouble. Leaning in. They're using their royal names to make money, Emarn. They're selling out their family. It's awful. Like those reality TV stars. All wanting attention. They're just trying to be independent. They want a regular life for Archie and Lilibet. Is that so bad? My cousin moved to the countryside for a simpler life, and she's never been happier. Regular? Ha! They're millionaires living in huge houses. They have no clue what regular is. Regular is worrying about paying bills, not which private plane to take. They deserve some happiness. They've been through a lot. The press hounded them constantly. They were practically forced to leave. It's bullying, pure and simple. Oh, don't act like the victim. They brought it on themselves with their constant whining and complaining, always blaming others. They just want to tell their story, their truth. It's their right. Oh, please, it's all about the money. Books, interviews, Netflix deals. They're making money everywhere. Just like, who was that actress? The one who married the billionaire? All for the money, darling.
Calling the royal family racist because they had called them racist.
I have to actually, with that, agree with Richard Tice, my colleague Richard Tice, in saying that when, Richard, you were right, if it hadn't been Oprah Winfrey, if it had been a British interviewer, I think a British interviewer would have challenged them on that and got them actually to say the words. My whole thing was that they didn't, as Susanna, your old colleague, agreed, they didn't actually say the words. And the reason they didn't, I don't think, is because they'd actually said the sentence, they probably would have been sued or God knows what. So my whole argument was they didn't actually say the words.
Yeah,
but
hang on, Tricia, hang on. As I said to you last week,
hang on, I haven't finished.
The key line to me, the key line in that whole thing with Oprah was when Oprah did actually follow up with one and said, are you saying that the concern was that if the baby's skin color was too brown, too dark, that would be a problem? Mm-hmm. And she said, yes, basically, you may well think that.
Pretty safe assumption.
That was a direct charge of racism.
I would have pushed it further. I would actually asked the question, are you saying that somebody in the royal family is racist?
Yeah, but I don't actually, look, I agree, and I would have done, but actually I don't think you needed to. I mean, Richard Tice, putting aside all the what side you're on of this debate, and look, there are lots of people who don't agree with me, I get it. But on that, I did feel completely incensed for the royal family. For 2 years, they had to put up with this charge of racism against all of them because we never got told who it was that supposedly expressed this concern. And when you watch back that exchange with Oprah, it was unequivocal. Yeah. When you watched it back, she specifically said that it would be a problem if the baby's skin colour was too dark. Yes, was the basic answer.
No one had any doubt. And there hadn't been any doubt all over the world for 2 years until Harry's interview.
And in a 6-part Netflix series, they never corrected it.
And so everyone's left completely gobsmacked. And you're sort of wondering, what's Harry's objective here?
The agenda has changed. Sorry to cut you, but the agenda has changed.
So that's the point. So did he find himself...
Not one word about this in the book.
No, exactly.
Not one word.
It's as though he thought, I've gone too far here.
Right.
I need to somehow find a way to row back. Or let's just give a distraction and go down another route. There's so many inconsistencies in all of this. Frankly, it's impossible to know where to start or finish.
I think it was very damaging. You know, if I represented a group like Black Lives Matter, for example, and I'd been working really hard to try and drag people with, racist undertones about them into a world where they're not racist because you explain what racism is. To have a member of the royal family and his wife, two of them, on global television, branding the royal family racist, and then basically saying that's not what we meant. I get why that would incense you. It would incense me.
I thought it was absolutely disgusting, and that's why, apologies for cutting you earlier, I just had to make this point about their agenda changing. I just want us to look at their journey for a moment. We watch them expose their truth. We like their truth. You see, I'm changing.
Right.
Expose their truth, defend themselves, and now they are on stage 3, which is about making amends. And so therefore, each agenda requires a different approach. And so from another strategic standpoint, if you take off the most damning claim of them all, which is the racism claim by far. The reason why is because you have to remember it connects to the royal family potentially paying reparations, and you don't even want to think about what that number would potentially look
but
like.
I would also, Iman, I would also add the other main charge, which I felt was incredibly damaging, was this allegation, direct allegation, that Meghan Markle felt suicidal and had gone to somebody at the palace seeking help and had been told she couldn't get it because it would be basically damaging for the brand. Again, not a word of that in the book. That's just disappeared like that never happened. We never got told who that palace employee was. For all we know, they might still be working there. Did they say that? Did they look at a woman saying, I'm suicidal, and say, you can't get help? I didn't believe it at the time. I don't believe it now. Not a word in the book. And this is, again, I think, a form of gaslighting on that issue.
Yes.
So you've got race and mental health were the two sticks to beat the royal family with, both of them now shattered in terms of any evidence.
I will not defend the indefensible. I know that people like Trisha and many others try. I'm not prepared to do it. Once I realise you're a liar, you're a liar. I will defend what I believe in, but once you've crossed that line, you've crossed that line.
Right.
That's a really good example of the contradictions. I hate to point out contradictions. I'm a big fan, or was a big fan of both of them. But even the whole therapy thing, I mean, I could sit here and defend, you know, for very long lengths of time, sit in conversations defending them. But the reality is they've contradicted themselves. They contradicted themselves when it came to the whole therapy thing.
I'm sorry, let's be clear. They're liars.
They've contradicted themselves,
they are
and
liars,
they have lied.
And they have lied on a global stage repeatedly and caused enormous damage. And I said this 2 years ago, nothing has changed my mind. In fact, if anything, the disingenuousness of the race charge being removed, the mental health stuff just disappearing and not being mentioned again, has all just confirmed to me I was right all along.
I mean, it's been concreted in stone, this lying, these inconsistencies. And you sort of wonder, where does it go from here? The only upside is that Clarkson's done the royal family a favour.
Yeah, and I agree with that point.
They have to maintain the moral high ground, say nothing, do nothing, send an invitation, but make sure through the back door they understand they're not to come.
Not your constant criticism. It's heartbreaking to see them constantly attacked. They've shown no respect for tradition, for their family, for their country. They've made a mess, now they have to deal with it. Actions have consequences, darling. I can see this is going nowhere. We'll just have to agree to disagree. You're impossible. Smugly. Some things are more important than your precious Harry and Meghan, Iman. Some things are sacred, like respecting the Queen.